Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dan Vogel and Bob Johnson. Did anybody have difficulty dialing in? Can everybody access the WebEx? I will take that as a yes. All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Dan Vogel and Bob Johnson. We're part of the Service Integration Management Group here at NASA's headquarters. What we'd like to do today is take some time to discuss one of the workshops that we've been working on, basically doing an outbrief of problem management. This was the third of the fifth process development workshops that we've done, and this will be a recorded outbrief. So we will be providing the URL up on the OCIO website. So if you have people that you'd like to be able to listen to this presentation, it will notify you, and you can forward that link to them. So as I mentioned a second ago, this was the third of 5 process development workshops that we did here at NASA. They were all geared around I3P and ensuring that our processes for I3P are solid and that we can coordinate back and forth with the service providers from an agency-wide perspective. What that means is each center certainly does a lot of these processes today, and they certainly do a good job of them. But one thing we want to do is have all these processes from an agency-wide perspective. So we corralled, I guess it was 10 centers together up here at headquarters. A lot of great participation from all the centers.
Plus missions.
Plus the missions, exactly. And we came up with an end-to-end process for IT problem management. Previously, we had done IT incident management, and we did IT enterprise service request management. But this one really is geared around identifying the root cause associated with an incident or a set of incidents. From a scope perspective, again, it was agency-wide. So we recognized that the centers and all the different communities in IT will have some variations. They'll have some procedural level documentation associated with problem management. But for all intents and purposes, our view was end-to-end agency-wide. Activities such as diagnosing the root causes of incidents, determining the workarounds and solutions associated with those, maintaining information about problems, and ultimately the appropriate workaround information, the knowledge and known error information associated with it, so we can help NASA ultimately reduce the number and impact of incidents over time. A couple critical objectives. Again, we're going to say agency-wide many times during this discussion. We want to make sure that it's not one particular technical area. It's not for one particular center, but this is what we're doing to align I3P and NASA with our I3P service providers. We also looked at a lot of the core problem management process tasks and critical success factors. We rolled out a 2B process model associated with problem management. We looked at a lot of the core roles and responsibilities, the performance measurements, a lot of the risks and some of the mitigations associated with those risks. And we also tried to identify a set of post-workshop activities, which I believe are completed at this time, but really put an action plan together given all the stuff that has to be done in relation to problem management and I3P in general, ensuring that we had ownership, dependencies, and some of the core dates associated with those.
So the basic principles or bylaws for this workshop that we went through is alignment with ITIL v3. And that alignment is as per the RFPs that went out for all the different outsourcing contracts in the 5 areas. Customers should come first looking for both proactive and reactive problem management. We'll talk more about that. And incident and problem are separate processes. It's key that we understand that. In the next couple of slides, we're going to stress that again. Sometimes folks use the word problem when they mean incident, and we're going to take care of that because it's very clearly defined in ITIL, and we've decided to take that approach. Problem management processes must be managed. Tickets must be logged and have ownership, and all tickets must be closed by the centralized enterprise service desk. So real quick, if you've seen these before, again, we used a lot of tools out of the Lean Six Sigma toolbox. ITIL and Lean Six Sigma worked very well together. ITIL is the basic framework for IT service management, and then Six Sigma looking for improvements on the quality of the existing and the to-be process. So what is problem management? A problem is the unknown cause of one or more incidents. Okay? Again, it's the unknown cause of one or more incidents. Problem management is that process responsible for controlling the life cycle of that process. The primary objective of problem management is to prevent problems and incidents, eliminate repeating incidents in the future, and certainly minimize the impact of incidents that cannot be prevented. The root cause analysis, as Dan said, is the primary responsibility of problem management, and it's looking for remediation and workarounds for those problems, for those multiple incidents, if you will. Again, this goes into a database called the known error database, and problem management also is responsible for identifying a potential fix. And what I mean by that is you have to evaluate as part of this process whether or not you can actually afford to move forward with that workaround or solution. And now fixes, and we'll show you this when we get more detailed, are ultimately managed through the change management process. Are there any questions about problem management, what it is and why it's different than incident?
Okay, so let's clarify a couple things. Bob mentioned incidents and problems are different. So let's discuss why they're different. An incident is an impact or even a potential impact to service. So, for example, something might, the screen broke or my mouse is broken. That's a pretty obvious impact to service. You might see a degradation in network bandwidth, which causes a slowdown in the service overall. That also is an incident. So it's important that we have a group that's responsible for looking at incidents overall, trying to do at least, even if it's just rebooting, trying to get that service back up to normal. That's incident management. It is possible that we've got multiple incidents coming in at the same time, and we recognize, hey, this is having a big impact to NASA from an overall service perspective. Let's ensure that we're able to not only get them back up and running, but also look at the root cause. And that's when we start to get into problem management. So in a sense, incident management doesn't really look at fixing the underlying cause. Incident management just tries to get a restoration of service. That could be duct tape and baling wire. A problem on the other hand, looks at the unknown cause of one or more incidents. So for example, if we're seeing a degradation in network bandwidth, okay, well, what's causing that? Is it associated with information coming over the trunk? Is it a piece of hardware that's malfunctioning? There has to be a set of resources associated with that to ensure that we identify what that is. So problem management looks at the root cause analysis, determines some of the issues associated with it, looks at potentially reducing the impact of and potentially resolving the cause of the incident, but it doesn't necessarily fix the whole issue. Okay? It identifies the root cause. It identifies what could potentially be done. It identifies what you see at the bottom here, which is a known error, which is a documented root cause and or workaround. If it's determined that there's a business value to fixing the underlying problem, that's going to go through change management. So again, incident management, there's something wrong, there's an impact or potential impact to service. Problem management, what's the underlying cause associated with that? If we know what it is, but we really haven't fixed it yet, it goes into a known error database so we can address it as more incidents of the same come in. And then if we do want to fix it going forward, that's going to go through change management. And those are some of the real basics associated with problem management. At the same time, folks will say, well, some of these problems are going to be reactive. Can some be proactive? Yeah, it's going to be both. There are two important types of problems. So reactive would be we've got multiple incidents hitting the service desk at the same time. And generally we're going to look at that as part of general service operations, and people are going to say, hey, we're getting a lot of these calls, we need to address this underlying problem right now. On the other hand, when we start looking over time at incidents that we've seen come into the service desk, and we're doing some analysis of that long list of incidents, we may start to see some trends. And we may say, oh, you know what, this should be something that gets resolved within the environment. Is there a value to doing that? And all that is going to come under general continuous service improvement. Okay, so again, there's a reactive element generally driven by incident management, and there's a proactive element which is coming via continuous service improvement and problem analysis. So everybody says, we do a lot of that stuff today. This is one of I think the most fun of the Kaizens for us, because everybody at NASA wants to get things resolved, and they want to get it resolved right now. So most of the groups were treating everything as problem management. Let me find the underlying cause of whatever the issue was right now, as opposed to, well, let's just get the service up and running for right now, and let's identify what's valuable moving forward, where we should dedicate those resources into doing that underlying root cause analysis. So when we did an as-is mapping of who does what and where do things go and who participates at what point and what are the tasks, it was really kind of a difficult initiative for the team, because there wasn't much delineation between incident and problem management. So one thing we did was we mapped up all the various tasks. We looked at some of the goes into and goes out ofs associated with that by different roles and responsibilities. And then we looked at those tasks and we identified areas where they added value to the overall process. There were certain things which didn't add value, which were somewhat wasteful. And then there were other ones which were required. They didn't add value, they didn't take away, but they were tenets of what we had to do, so we had to adhere to those. So we took all those things into consideration, and we tried to identify a list of critical success factors, major issues associated with the environment today, and we came up with a go-forward strategy.
So the team looked at the current state as we identified that, and we did come up with many issues and waste areas that we saw. And one thing we wanted to do, we knew we couldn't attack all of these in great detail, but we did want to look at the top ones and make sure they were identified, and certainly a little bit of depth on the analysis of that to see if we can get to the whys and what the mitigation would be. The first one was no known error database. We realized that problem management is not done very well proactively by much anybody in any organization. So obviously there was no centralized known error database. Lack of problem management role, pretty obvious. If it's not being done in a very formal way today, there's not going to be a problem manager. Lack of communication, complexity of integration with other processes and vendor processes across contracts and centers. So where there was problem management being done, where we saw certain places, such as the NEAC group, does do problem management. And they did it very well, actually, and lots of very well defined, but it was not agency-wide. And when it came to the integration with all the different processes that we're talking about, they do not exist. No standard classification and limited analytical tool ability. So again, a couple of tools we used, you've seen this before, we used these top 6, and we identified the cause and effect of these using a cause and effect analysis chart, Ishikawa. And went into great detail about the causes and whys. After that, we looked at a source of variation matrix and looking for action plans on those different waste areas.
Okay. So as you see on the right-hand side here, this is one of the actual graphics from the session, and we had some really knowledgeable people within the workshops, as you know. I think we had the benefit of having 80% at least at all 5 of the workshops. And everybody looked at those critical success factors that we identified and the issues and the waste areas, and they came up with ideas. And we tried to categorize those ideas in different pockets, and what you see up there on the right are exactly that. Then we tried to weight those ideas in relation to the benefit. Does it have a small benefit or a big benefit versus the ease or difficulty associated with the implementation. So you see a lot of those ideas are relatively easy to do and have a big benefit, and we just want to get those done. Certain things are hard to do, again with a big benefit, and those require a little bit more finesse. There's a little bit of budgeting or a little bit of resource requirement to be able to do that. There's some willingness, I think, to set up the systems in a certain way and to communicate across different parties. So again, certain things are easy to do, certain things are a little bit more difficult to do, but we tried to put those in relation, and everything we've done going forward then from an action plan perspective took some of those things into account from a priority perspective. Critical success factors wise, we looked at some of the, Bob mentioned the critical issue of having a problem management role. And we'll say role doesn't necessarily mean an individual, but there's a set of functions that a group or a person or a set of people have to do, and that is looking at things like the resources required, training, coordination with service providers and centers. A lot of folks today are going to say, well, I3P going forward, I'm doing networking at Marshall, and I'm doing data center at Kennedy. Well, what happens when there's an issue which crosses both platforms and has to be addressed by communities that exist at Marshall, a service provider at Marshall and a service provider at Kennedy? So there's a coordination effort that has to occur. Looking at a known error database. So certainly a lot of smart people here at NASA, a lot of people that are working hard, and wouldn't it be nice if we could leverage that knowledge that's been discovered associated with these underlying root causes across the agency? So we spoke about a known error database and the ability to do that. Definitely buy-in from upper management is a critical success factor. You can't ask people to do things that they're not currently doing today, or get people to change, or even bring in new vendors and have them participate without that upper management support. We spoke about communication. It's not only downward communication, but it's upward and horizontal. And there are, especially when we get into multiple tier 2, 3 vendors participating in something like problem or incident management, we want to make sure that the communication is solid across. We spoke a lot about integration with the other processes, and that actually came up initially when we did these Kaizens. People thought only of that specific process. This was the third of the processes, and by this point, people started to think, well, we did something similar with incident management. We had a touch there to enterprise service request management. How are we going to integrate all these processes together? So we went from singular process thinking to threaded process thinking, which was great. And then we also got into things like analytical tools and performance measurement. All this stuff came together, I guess, around the late second to the early third day. A lot of ideas, a lot of new understanding of what problem management should or could be, and the team mapped out the 2B flow, which is what you see here up on the screen. And you see it's a pretty good span. It takes up a full wall within the OCIO. We looked at some of the core bundles of activity, things like the initial logging, the identification, the logging, the root cause analysis, the what do we do with it going forward, and then the closure of the problem ticket, the handoffs to and from the Tier 2, 3 service providers. So all that's accounted for within this mapping.
So I'm going to skip this and come back. Well, let's just stay with this, because these are the key activities that Dan's going to go in great detail with. Just to block these up, these will be going across the top. Problem detection was the first step. Registration or ticket logging. Classification, prioritization, investigation and diagnosis, decide on the workarounds, identification of known errors, resolution, closure, and review. And again, Dan's going to go through these in detail now.
So what you see up here, this is the first of two slides that we're going to go through, and it's essentially a distillation of what you saw on the last two screens. Of course, the major categories are running across the top, and you see a lot of the roles down the left-hand side. So you'll see Tier 2, 3 service providers, the enterprise service desk. We put problem management team. That doesn't necessarily exist today, but that role should exist going forward. Now, this whole process starts with the identification that there's an issue. There's a set of incidents that have occurred. We need to identify that there's a root cause somewhere associated with this issue. That could be electronic, that could be a vendor, that could be a customer calling in the service desk. However it is, it comes into the system. And a problem ticket is created. So that includes things like initial categorization, prioritization, and any kind of relevant incident documentation that's associated with it. That problem then is going to get assigned based on categories, types, and items. So say, oh, this is a networking issue. This is a data center issue. It has to go somewhere to Tier 2, 3 to do some of that initial work. I think it was agreed that from if this was incident management, the enterprise service desk would play a big role in this. Because it's problem management, because we're looking at the root cause, this is now a lower level. So this is going right to Tiers 2, 3. They're going to accept the problem ticket and do some initial preliminary diagnosis. They're going to look at their known error databases. There may be one large known error database across NASA as part of I3P, which we hope, given the ESD tool, should be the system of record. But we recognize that everybody's going to have some kind of knowledge base on the side. Once that's done, if they don't see any kind of known error documentation or they don't think it's their group, they can forward it back to another party within NASA and say, hey, can you reassign this? If they agree that they're the right group, they're going to check within their systems for known errors. They're going to either identify that information is available, or they're going to go and try and do a deeper dive. If the information is available, they're going to attempt to resolve that underlying issue using that known error information. If the problem gets resolved, terrific. Then they can go forward, identify if any additional review is required, and if not, then they say, yeah, we think it's done, and it gets a deferred status or pending status, waiting for the ESD or the problem manager ultimately to say, yeah, that ticket's closed. If they can't identify what the underlying issue is, if there's no known error information associated with it, then they're going to do what's called investigation and diagnosis. So that's, again, there's no existing documentation, there's no hand-to-hand documentation or person-to-person understanding of what's going on, so they need to do that real deep dive underlying diagnosis. Any questions up to this point? Okay, let's go to the next slide. And on slide 2, here's where we start looking at, and let's take it again from that Tier 2, 3 side of things. We're going to look at identifying what that workaround or resolution could be. So if we agree that, yeah, we've identified what it is, then we need to look at the change process and say, okay, is there a change process required? If yes, well, then a change ticket is going to be entered to actually make that alteration to the environment. And the whole reason for that is we don't want to cause more pain to the environment by altering something or trying to fix something when it could, in fact, have a ripple effect throughout the environment. So any alteration we make, we want to make sure is documented, that people are aware of what the potential impact might be. We want to make sure that there's a rollout history identified, and if there's any kind of backup procedure, that's also documented. If the change process isn't required, then they can resolve that outstanding ticket. They can make that, if it's not a change-worthy alteration, they can resolve it, update the ticket, and then update the known error database. So that would include things like any updates to the configuration item information, any kind of workaround documentation, any kind of initial entry by tiers 2, 3, including things like cleansing or formatting by the ESD. In a sense, what we're trying to do is distill down all that work that's been done and document it so that if we see this problem again, hey, it wasn't worth fixing through change, but if you see this again, here's what the issue is. Once all that's done, then the ESD needs to contact any kind of associated party and ensure that that problem was addressed. In most cases, this is going to be the reactive flavor of problem management. If it was proactive, ESD may not even know that this is being worked on the back end. But if we had multiple incidents that made it a problem-worthy event, then we need to get back to those folks that were experiencing the incidents, and that's what you see there. Ultimately, the documentation gets finalized, the ticket gets closed, and then finally there will be some kind of scheduling review associated with all the problems. We're going to look at the history, we're going to look at the known errors over time, and then on an ongoing basis, we're going to take that information and look for opportunities for refinement within the environment via change management. We're going to look at things that weren't possible to change in the past. Maybe technology has updated and we've got a new potential there. Maybe we make that change now. And then on an ongoing basis as well, continual service improvement throughout. You'll see that throughout the process we've got things like updating the ticket. You've got things like escalation. Well, I couldn't identify what the underlying issue is, and we've got a bunch of concerned customers out there. Do I need to escalate it and get other technicians involved? Do I need to get management involved? So that's why you see escalation in there a few times. Any questions?
Okay, as always, there were risks identified with this new process. They have been assigned to owners. They're being worked currently, and they all have due dates. The actual role that Dan was talking about, a pretty important piece of this. In other words, to do this proactively, it has to have a team. And to get that team together, you have to have a problem manager. The success of this process depends on the right people performing all these actions that Dan just went through. And it's got to be the responsibility of a problem manager. Some of the roles they have will be to maintain and develop these processes, these control activities that we just talked about. From a life cycle standpoint, to monitor the effectiveness of the error control activities and make recommendations for improvement. Responsible to make sure that the known error database is always being looked at, and to monitor the progress of problems and known errors toward a final resolution, as Dan just walked through. In other words, this just can't be open-ended. So a new role, it's been identified, it's been addressed by the team, and it's been shown to folks presently to hopefully get that role in place, and that's what's taken place today with a lot of the reorg that's taken place within NASA. Some of the other things that the problem manager role would be doing, some of the other duties, performance reports, obviously, from a life cycle standpoint, the audits and reviews, and again, it's key that this particular person or persons pull together the right teams in a proactive way to make the process successful.
And one of the tools that we used within the Kaizen was this RACI model. Okay, and what that does is it takes in a matrix fashion the major problem management process tasks running across the top, and some of the core roles and responsibilities down the left-hand side, and it identifies who does what within the process. Now, who does what within the process is a great start. We also identified via RACI who was responsible for a particular activity, who actually participated in a particular part of the process, who's accountable, who ultimately owns that core part of the process, who's consulted with regard to an element within the process, and then who also might be informed. So this is a nice way of partitioning out some of the roles and responsibilities and some of the levels of responsibility that people have. That mustard-colored stripe in this matrix, that's the problem manager. So like Bob mentioned, coming out of the workshop, we had an activity to identify, because that role typically on the street is a pretty significant role, what are the specifics associated with problem management? And we came up with, I think the team came up with, what, like 2 to 3 pages
of requirements,
and just hard, hard hitting. This is what that team needs to be doing. So that was a good tool that we used. Also, we looked at some of the key performance indicators. Certainly, there are a lot of performance measures that people look at with regard to any of the process that we've been discussing. These are some of the ones that the team came up with. They're pretty common out there on the street. Things like percentage of problems assigned incorrectly, number of problems by type, severity, average time to resolve the problems. And you could go on for days with an endless list of performance measures. I think the team came up with about 10 to 12 core ones. You see them on both pages 1 and 2. And these are preliminary cuts. I think, as with most of the stuff coming out of these workshops, they were designed as, we think these are solid ideas. These are certainly great, good go-forward ideas. But when we start looking at the implementation, as we start maturing with the ESD, we want to make sure that those capabilities exist. There are certain measures, problems as a result of changes, which we probably won't be able to get from day one. So if we identify them as we recognize that that's a great measurement to have, can't really get it today, but we put it there as a placeholder. Things like number of problems or number of problems per number of incidents per problem, those are pretty common daily measures that we can capture today.
So after 4 days, 4 full days, we did come up with activities, obviously, that we couldn't accomplish in those days, and these are key activities that we deem necessary to implement to make this process successful. This is the latest update on the activities that came out of problem management. The first one is knowledge area database that is currently being developed by the ESD. And again, this is the database where the resolutions and known errors will be housed. For example, if they see a blue screen, what do they do? And that should be in the KEDB. Problem management role was defined by the team, led by Susan Levine, and that was floated, as I said, to our executives. The implementation of the SIL meetings has been kicked off, and they're ongoing. They meet almost every week. We had a big face-to-face last week. Performance measures, they have been complete. Well, I take that back. As Dan said, from a first cut standpoint, they were identified by this workshop. There's also other people taking a look at these, and along with the alignment that are in the RFPs, these will be resolved and hopefully finished by the end of the month. If they're ongoing, we'll certainly change that date. Then documentation, the process flow, you saw that Dan marched through. So these were the activities. We stayed on top of these as a team, and hopefully communicated these to the powers to be from an execution standpoint. The next page is the actual team that did all this fine work, and I'll just ask you, everybody on this call, certainly if you have any questions, please ask us now. If you want to get back to us a little bit later, that's fine. Just contact Dan or I, and we'll answer your questions.
And certainly if you have technical groups that you need a deeper dive with some of these processes, feel free to give us a call. We'd be happy to do that as well.
Yeah, because I want to point out again, as Dan did up front, this is a summary. The actual outbrief is a little more detailed in each of those activity block areas that we talked about. There's more tasks that we identified. So this is a good summary. Hopefully this will get you and your folks where they want to be. So we expect you, as Dan said, to go to the OCIO website. This is being recorded. Grab this and use this as a tool for Train the Trainer. And again, if you have any questions, get back to us or ask us now.
Hi, this is Cindy Legowick with ICE Training and Support, and we'll be trying to work with you guys as a Tier 2-3 support with the Enterprise Service Desk. And will you be doing sessions with your Tier 2, 3 support, to see how we fit with you and how our systems work with you, or will we be part of your system? How is all that going to work? Has that been defined yet?
Well, Cindy, we've been discussing that with the powers that be, and we're currently evaluating training. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we're setting up a training schedule at each of the centers.
Okay.
I think there's an opportunity. I believe Jeff Bauer works with you.
Yes.
Okay. So we've had a session already between our group and Jeff and a couple of his people. I'm not sure if you were on that.
No.
But we're certainly open to doing those communications and having a training session. For new vendors coming in, as the I3P vendors are selected, there will probably have to be some kind of training specific to them as well. So, we're open to any kind of training or any kind of just general session that you feel you want us to come in and facilitate or come in and help with.
And who do I contact to talk to about that?
You can call us directly, Dan Vogel or Bob Johnson.
Okay.
And we'll communicate that or we'll coordinate that with our management.
Okay.
We can do it WebEx or, however best facilitates it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, we want to thank you. We're going to come back at 2:30. If you want to stay on this line, certainly do. But we're going to shut down until 2:30 because that's the next scheduled process development workshop out brief, and that is change management. Thank you.